Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Hey, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, and I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're so happy to be with you, and happy that you're joining us today. It's just the two of us. We should have had an audio switch right there. It's just the two of us. And we could have
the two of us.
And we could have paid for that. We could have paid for those rights with all the extra money that we have. But I guess just in your head, everyone.
It could have been our tribute to the recently passed Bill Withers.
There's that, yeah.
It really is a Bill Withers song. It's credited to Grover Washington, the sax player, because it was on his album. Mm-hmm. But he didn't even write the song. He just plays the sax on the album. Grover Washington Jr. is an incredible saxophone player. I'm just saying he made a light pop record in 1980. And this is why we don't do a music show.
Because
I don't mind rambling on about movies. For some reason, that's interesting. The story behind the story in music almost kills the romance. Not all the time, but a little over half the time.
Right.
It's like, dude, who wants to listen to music minutia for... Whereas movies, it's different. We get away with it. I feel like we get away with it, don't you?
I think so. I sure hope so. I hope for our listeners' sake that we get away with it a little bit.
Anyway, the two of us.
It's just the two of us today.
Ironic. That's a smashing song. Check it out.
No, yeah. And a little teaser. We will be joined again by a guest next week. But Ryan and
Same guest as last week.
Same guest as last week. We're gonna. So we're the creamy center.
We sort of teased that last week.
That's true.
Week's episode is coming up. So
we talked
about. If you've been following us all along, you'll be excited for that. It's going to be fun. Three old pals talking about
fish.
One of the best movies really ever in one of the worst movie series.
It'll
be weird. It'll be a nice mix.
It is a black diamond slope.
We've all seen a lot of line graphs in the news lately, and this one definitely it's definitely trending the same direction. That series. So tune in for that.
Yeah, but this week we thought we would take a look at, because again we whenever possible should be staying at home still, and we can enjoy our streaming services and our massive DVD and Blu-ray collections if you have them. We thought we would talk about some movies that were I guess I don't know, they were kind of predicted, or they kind of thought of that these were going to be big blockbusters.
Well, we talked about a little last week, and in setting up the show, we talked about the difference between genre and form.
Yeah.
These are different genres, but the form for almost all of them is Hollywood blockbuster.
Yeah.
That's the form that they take, and the way the story is delivered. It's the same for almost all of them. But the idea was not to discuss them as some related group of movies, but as a helpful tip, since we're all going without summer blockbusters this summer, and it looks like Warner Brothers is determined to release Tenet to theaters on time, despite the fact that theaters aren't even open and no one's going to the theater.
Right.
So there's one that's coming up. That's one that's to be excited about. But everything else, the MCU films, the Bond movie, the Disney remakes, all those have been pushed off
All the big
into the
name
fall,
sequels,
but really, really indefinitely. I mean, you're going to see changes yet, I believe. For some of
I
them.
think, some have already just said we're going to release it next summer. Like it'll be a blockbuster for next year.
Right. Since everything they had in production is stalled, it'll be useful for them to have them for next year. It really will be like a do-over.
Yeah.
Things that could go straight to streaming went straight to streaming, but you're getting no summer blockbusters. So here's a list of summer blockbusters. They didn't all come out during the summer. They were almost none of them blockbusters by definition because nobody really went to see them. But they're big, budgeted, lavish productions, big films that you skip for one reason or another, mostly good reasons, probably. But we'll give you a reason. We'll tell you a little about what they are. We'll try and give you some reasons. We'll discuss why they got skipped and why maybe they didn't do so well. Internal and external reasons for those. We'll discuss why they're worth giving another chance to. And it's an opportunity for you to pick 4 or 5 of these and watch blockbusters you haven't seen.
Yeah,
and have a blockbuster summer. That's the idea behind the show.
We'll remind you of something. Yeah, we'll remind you of something that maybe you saw that you're like, oh man, I should have checked that out, or I've seen that title come up on, on my recommended for you page or something, or
that looked horrible, but you know what? Maybe it's my kind of horrible.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, because we all have our own sense of horrible.
I'll think about that. I'll give that one a second thought, since there's nothing else. There's lots of things. Hamilton, that's exciting. I'm finally going to get to see Hamilton.
Yep, that will be a good time.
So, the media has been kind to us in other ways. Theaters, we can't save the theaters with this show, but we can give you a little taste of a big summer movies. For the cost of just a bag of microwave popcorn.
There you go. So let's just jump right on in, and so when we were looking at this, we did do a cutoff of 10 years ago. So it's where we start in 2010.
Did I tried to, but I wasn't sure if I
we did. We stopped at right at 2010. So we're keeping it within
blockbusters you skipped in the last 10 years.
And there are plenty that you guys skipped. I mean, I'm just going to tell you right now.
We don't have to tell you.
Yeah, you skipped a bunch, and that's fine. But let's start with the 2010 not remake, but like the retelling of the classic story of Robin Hood with Russell Crowe.
Oh no, I wasn't thinking of that one. I was thinking of the one from last year with Jamie Foxx and.
Oh, you were thinking of that one. Oh, see, I've completely discounted even that one.
Robin Hood, the Ridley Scott Robin Hood with Russell Crowe it's blockbustery. I actually recommend watching that if you can catch it in its longer version. It's more of a historical epic in its form than Hollywood blockbuster, but it's certainly a big film.
Well,
We've talked about it before on the show. It's not great, but it's not garbage either.
Well, we're going to make the Robin Hoods bookend this, and so we'll come back and we'll talk about the 2019 or 2018 version of Robin Hood at the end of this list, because it will bookend.
That is really Robin Hood as summer blockbuster. The Ridley Scott film with Russell Crowe is Robin Hood as historical figure origin story.
Yeah,
and it's good. It's got Oscar Isaac is a great bad guy in it. He replaces Danny Houston, who's the bad guy early in the film, who's great. Kate Blanchett's great. Max von Sydow in one of his last roles is great. William Hurt's in it. He's great. So there's a lot to like about it. It's very handsomely done. The only thing that sucks about Robin Hood is I happen to have read the script that movie was supposed to be based on. And that script is a tight, really well thought out, clever alternative way of telling the Robin Hood story. And what they turned it into was nothing like that. And I always found that to be a tragedy. The script is called The Sheriff of Nottingham. Oh. And the sheriff is the main character, and he's sent by the new king, King John, not a great king historically. He oversaw the signing of the Magna Carta, which was a big deal, but he hated it, the Magna Carta, and he went back on his word like the very next year and punished everybody. He was an awful king. There's a Shakespeare play about it as well. Anyway, all that's in Nottingham. It's a really interesting time in history, the end of the Crusades, the people, it's actually rich people. It's the revolt of the rich people who don't feel like being taxed so heavily by the king anymore. Mm-hmm. But the result of that was this document, this first ever sort of, in Western culture anyway, human rights document, basically, that's really key. And it's about the England that surrounds the inspiration for that. And it should be great. As it is, it's diminished greatly, and it's still pretty good because it's still Robin Hood, and that stuff is fun. Yep. But I wish they'd have just shot Nottingham. God, I really wish somebody would have just shot that. It's such a good script, and now they won't because they feel like they did, even though they didn't.
Sure.
That's an inauspicious start to our blockbuster list. It's neither a blockbuster nor.
Well, that's on me.
I can't help but talk about it because I'm interested in that.
Yeah, when I was sorting through these, my brain completely has blocked out the Taron Egerton.
Came out in the summer. Box.
Yeah,
I mean, but it's more like Gladiator and Braveheart. It's that kind of movie. It's not. It's not it shouldn't have come out in the summer. It's not a summer blockbuster. So
right. Well, okay. Well, then we'll move right on to 2012 and the movie John Carter.
John Carter, based on the Edgar Rice Burroughs, who the creator of Tarzan, based on his novel Princess of Mars.
Right.
The names is just fun. A Princess of Mars is what it should be called. They changed the name to John Carter of Mars because they didn't think princess in the title would make sci-fi fans come out and see it. And then they did some study that said that things with Mars in the title didn't sell well either. So they got rid of that. And you were left with just John Carter, which is
John Carter.
Has no meaning.
Yep.
John Carter of Mars is lame because it's not as cool as A Princess of Mars, which is a great title.
Yeah.
But it's cool because he keeps introducing himself he's introduced as John Carter of Earth when he makes this fantastical travel to Mars, and by the end of it, he's John Carter of Mars. So it's a neat. Sure. It has a neat meaning to it that I was prepared to live with. When they dropped the Mars part, I'm like, do you guys even know what you're doing? Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're not wrong about that. Mars movies don't do well, but you decided to spend $200 million on a Mars movie that the whole thing is this guy from post-Civil War era America travels to Mars magically and becomes like their messiah, basically. You can't hide it takes place in Mars just by taking that out of the title.
Right. Yeah.
It just was such a dumb-headed decision that movie is preposterously lavish. They could have made a really great Princess of Mars adaptation for half the money. Mm-hmm. It only happened because Disney wanted to make its own version of Avatar. It's inspired visually and stuff by Avatar, basically. That was the hugest movie in the world at the time. But however many years later, 3-4 years later, by the time John Carter hit theaters, Avatar wasn't even really much thought of. Nobody wanted to see a movie like that. And Burroughs is a great speculative fiction writer, and his story is great, and they stick pretty much to his story, but people skipped it because it looked cheesy, and it is super cheesy. Mm-hmm. It is, but it is, man. You have to just get over it. I can't remember the name of the Messiah, in Dune, it's the Kwisatz Haderach, which is pretty weird. Mm-hmm. In Mars, it's Sojak or something, some weird term. And there's this line where Taylor Kitsch has to say that. He says it all like, I am Sojak. and of you and Tarkus and of all the Tharks. it's weird
Yeah.
and it's stupid, and it sounds stupid when you say it. It's like ordering one of those fancier Dairy Queen things at the drive-through. Like the names are so silly that you don't even want to say them out loud because they make you sound dumb. And a lot of John Carter of Mars is that. However, if you get over that, if you just agree to that it's silly and you understand that it is, there's a lot to recommend it. It is, no penny was spared, and it's all up there on the screen. The digital performances, particularly by Samantha Morton, but also Willem Dafoe, are really great. I mean, they're fun. He's got, John Carter gets a sidekick dog, alien dog, that's really fun and cute. And there's cute alien babies, and there's big giant airships and battles with all these weird sort of steampunk looking weapons and technology. It's fantastical and fun, and a film with a big massive canvas, lots of humor. Not all of it works, but that's a fun movie that is really lavishly done, that if you're willing to, you don't have to turn your brain off, but you have to adjust to that old style writing, the cheesiness of it, because they don't temper any of that. They run full into it, and you just have to be down with that. If you are, that's an entertaining film, I think. Yeah. The bookends that take place in the American West and in London, England, are fantastic, and there's some things in it that are genuinely cool.
Yeah,
real science fiction, old timey science fiction magic.
Mm-hmm. Taylor Kitsch was going to be, I mean, that was going to be the thing that was going to launch him to, he was going to be.
Yeah. And then later that summer, he was in Peter Berg's Battleship, which isn't on our list, but could be. Hard to recommend Battleship, but yeah. Taylor's pretty good in both of them. He just wasn't in a hit, so he didn't become a bankable star. He's still a pretty good actor.
Yeah, he's a fine actor. And of course, this was going to be the thing that launched him from Friday Night Lights into, he was going to be Chris Pratt before Chris Pratt.
And he's had all kinds of, he was great on the second season of, what's the Woody Harrelson, Matthew McConaughey?
The True Detective.
Yeah, people thought that second season was bafflingly dense and weird, which it was. But him and Rachel McAdams, and I mean, he was really, really good on
it. Terribly sorry.
I like that second season. So I don't know. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. I tend to like things everybody seems to pile on, and the more people pile on it, the kind of more defensive I get about it. So John Carter's one of those movies. It was a bit of a joke when it came out, and it's a bit of a joke when you're watching it, but it's a good-hearted, fun old Disney movie with lots of fun stuff in it. So
yeah, you got
a big, great cast: Bryan Cranston, Mark Strong, James Purefoy, Kieran Hines. It's full of great people, all of which who know they're in a cheesy movie, but they're all giving it their all and having fun.
Yeah,
that's all you can ask.
All right, so up next we're going to go to 2013 and another Disney property, Jack the Giant Slayer.
Oh yeah, was Warner Brothers and Legendary actually that did Jack the Giant Slayer. Yeah,
I guess I was
it's a Bryan Singer movie.
Oh, I always just lump that in because Jack and I just go Jack and the Beanstalk or Jack the Giant. Sorry, Jack the Giant Slayer from Mickey Mouse.
Right. It feels very Disney, but it isn't. It's a meaner, darker movie than that.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So you have to be a little bit ready for that. But otherwise, it truly is an attempt to tell Jack and the Beanstalk. Leading actor is what's his face, the Beast from the.
I knew you were just gonna say it, and I was like, I gotta think of it.
I get all those guys his age mixed up, but he was great in Mad Max Fury Road, and he's a fun actor who basically is playing a most cliched boy hero in this. And Eleanor Tomlinson, who I really like, is the princess in it, and of course they're meant to be together and to save the day, and they do.
Nicholas Hoult.
Nick Holt, he really good. He's not great in this, but he's really good. But this movie, again, it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, there's a reason you skipped it. It is what you think. It's a pretty tired, full of cliches kind of thing. There was a really great essay written about it, about how useless the princess character is in it. The movie tonally doesn't reflect that, but she just went through blow by blow. Let's just see how much agency and how much utility this character has in the plot, and it's like virtually none.
Right.
She's that's not to say she's worthless. She's like a tough character who sort of sticks to her guns the whole movie, which is admirable. But even at the end, when the world needs somebody of royal lineage to come out and save the day, it's the peasant boy who does it. It's not
right.
Even though she's standing right there, it's not her for some reason. And even when I saw it for the first time, I was like, well, that's weird. It really should be her. You know, watch it. Let me know if I'm wrong about that. Jack the Giant Slayer is fun in a lot of ways. It's got a lot of surprises. Ewan McGregor in particular is really, really fun in it.
Yes, he is.
Stanley Tucci as well. I mean, there's some people really enjoying themselves. Eddie Marsan, who plays the king in that, the guy from the
yes, it is.
What's the guy's name? British guy. He's really great.
Yes, he is.
Sorry, I don't remember anybody's name anymore.
Ian McShane.
Ian McShane. He's great too. So it's a fun fairy tale. It's a little bit on the dark side. There is some stuff.
The
giants in it are really icky and
they're legit. They're legit scary. They're legit menacing. It's not just like I'm a giant dude and these are
ho I'm just going to chase you around a little bit like the skipper from Gilligan's Island. They do damage. They hurt a lot of people. The idea of them coming into a world of humans is a rather terrifying thought. The movie earns that. The big battle with them though is fun. The way they dispense the main bad guy is ingenious. There's some cool stuff in it, and if you like that kind of slightly darker, big scale bedtime story, again, if it's your kind of bad movie, you probably could have a lot of fun with that, even if you skipped it. It's another one, couple $170 million budget. It's made really well crafted by people who know what they're doing. It's just a story that feels a little rote.
Right. And
it came out at a time when nobody wanted a movie like that.
Yeah, it was a
John Carter. You can kind of see how they went wrong because of Avatar. Jack the Giant Slayer, I don't know how a group of people who's supposed to know what they're doing ever greenlighted that, but they did, and it's not that bad.
Yeah. All right. Next up, later that year, also in 2013, Lone Ranger, Johnny Depp.
Later that summer.
Yeah, later that summer. Army.
Lone Ranger. Okay.
It was a big July 4th release. I mean, it was July 3rd, but it was a big, Independence Day release, midsummer.
We'll talk about the details of Lone Ranger because there's some details that have to be talked about before I just say, oh, I really like Lone Ranger, which I do. Even this movie, all these movies have asterisks of them next to their names. This one has the biggest asterisk of all, or it's got the 3 plus that little cross plus the star sign, but it's fun. All it is a repackaging of those first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies. It's all the same people who wrote, directed, and crafted those. It's got the same lunacy in its action, the same humor in its drama, the same sort of dark underbelly that's where the character's irreverence is almost a defense mechanism against the cruel world that they live in. I genuinely like all of those things. So I very much like Lone Ranger and feel like it got a bit of a bad rap because it wasn't just John Carter. Ha ha ha. It was just people were gleeful that film bombed.
Yeah.
They just were so happy about it. And I was like, oh, okay. when I saw it later, though, I was like, oh, that's really too bad y'all piled on this. This movie, all this movie wants to do is entertain you. And it's actually trying to do it in a more substantive way than these often do, which I sort of admire. So let's get to the big asterisk now, and then I'll come back to some of the other things.
Yeah.
The big asterisk is it's got Johnny Depp's playing a Native American character in it.
Yeah.
Today, that would be impossible. So so less than 10 years ago, it should also be fairly impossible. Like, that really shouldn't have happened. And yet it's the whole ball game. Like, you can't take that out of it and even imagine the movie anymore. So it's frustrating to me that I really enjoyed a movie that has something like that in it. And worse, that I can't even sit here and say, well, they just should have got, Adam Beach to play the Tonto or whatever.
Sure.
Because that wouldn't work. You wouldn't have that film anymore with that.
And also
Johnny Depp's take on that character it's the whole reason for its existence almost.
It was going to be that was going to be his next Captain Jack Sparrow.
Right.
This kind of bonkers Tonto, and or Gonzo, more Gonzo Tonto.
He is a bit bonkers. Even the other Native Americans in the movie, the movie doesn't step outside of itself to comment on itself, but it is commenting on how Tonto specifically, but how Native Americans in general have been portrayed throughout history in these types of movies. Yeah. It's not unaware of that. There are other Native Americans in the film played by Native Americans who also think this Tonto is ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think that was...
They make that point.
Yeah, that was the way I think they were hoping to get around putting Johnny Depp in this.
They had to know it was awkward at the time. And like I said, it's just only a short time later, and now it's inconceivable.
Right.
We're not talking about a movie from the 30s. There's a great rock song by this guy named Matthew Good, this Canadian who I love. And one of the lines in it is, when Hollywood runs out of Indians, only the Indians will know.
Yeah.
And when I think of this movie, I think of that line. It's just the whole Hollywood way of looking at Native Americans isn't proud. It just isn't. Even the really good ones, full of great Native American performances, are like white hero stories like Dances with Wolves and Little Big Man, and it's hard to pick one where you can say, wow, this one did it right. I'm sure they're out there, but this film it's made in the style of that old Western, and having the white guy play the Native American it doesn't feel weird at all, but that's easy for me to say. I'm not a Native American. I've grown up with that legacy and that history, and it's just easy for me to sit back and enjoy it when I'm watching it, because it's almost like, what isn't that? But it's not okay. So again, that's criticizing it for what it's not, or for what it should have been. And it's a legit criticism. It's the criticism, frankly, because the movie, other than that it takes its time, it's a lot of walking and talking for what's supposed to be a big blockbuster action movie. Little action at the beginning and a shootout here and there throughout. But it doesn't really lay on the big heavy hits till the end of the film. But I gotta say, when that final action sequence comes, it's joyful, Joel. It's joyful movie making. I don't know how to put it. The movie doesn't play the William Tell overture. It teases it a couple times, but it doesn't play it until it starts up at the end. And Hans Zimmer's take on the William Tell overture goes on for about 11 minutes. It's glorious, and that the action is involving and emotional, while it's also being absurdly ridiculous in the way only Hollywood action can be. The people, the justice that's doled out easily and poetically, it's all just kind of wonderful and perfect. It's cliched, but I adore it because I like movies and I get what they're getting at with it. I think other people would enjoy it too, but
because there's a lot. It's there's yeah, I don't even know how to say it. If you can set aside the fact that this really
how can you
horrible
set that aside
but
really
you can't.
completely?
You can't. Yeah. So it's like if you can stomach it, I guess maybe but that's not
If I'll just say, if you really like the Pirates of the Caribbean films, and you were like, I didn't like these last two Pirates of the Caribbean films because it wasn't the same or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This movie's the same. It captures
beats.
all that same zany sort of craziness and fun that's in those that we liked so much.
Mm-hmm.
It does it in a different setting, but I think Armie Hammer's delightful. I think Ruth Wilson's great in it. It's just a lot of our buddy Barry Pepper shows up in it. He's great in it.
Yep.
William Fichtner plays this gross evil guy. Tom Wilkinson is the highbrow bad guy. It's just fun. But James Badge-Dale, but Johnny Depp as Tonto. Johnny Depp as Tonto. That's not something where I'll just forget about that. I mean, that's front and center the whole film. So I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah,
it's not okay, but
it's. Let's move on to the fall of 2013. So this is still, but this is still definitely that fall blockbuster, that holiday blockbuster thing, giving you something to watch, around Thanksgiving. Ender's Game.
Ender's Game.
Orson Scott Card.
Yeah, Orson Scott Card's a really, really good author, and his best sequence of novels started with a short story called Ender's Game, which he later expanded into a novel. And wouldn't you know it, that novel anyway, the rest in the series are decidedly uncinematic, but they're wonderful books, but they really are books in a way that it's hard to imagine them being movies.
Right.
But the first movie is basically just a boot camp movie, which is just a very cinematic structure that we're all super familiar with. And lo and behold, it's it's structured like all these young adult stories, basically, that we are inundated with now are structured. I didn't really view it as that at the time, but it is very much this young special kid is introduced into this new reality and has to cope with it. Ender's Game is great. Gavin Hood directed it. The novel has been adapted really well, and even though there's like most novel adaptation, there's not the depth of character there that there is in the novel that makes the novel so wonderful. The gist of the characters is really captured pretty amazingly on screen. Great performances by I can't remember the kid's name.
Asa Butterfield.
Teenage Abigail Breslin as his sister. Who's the girl from True Grit that plays his buddy in war school. She's awesome.
Gosh, yeah, and of course Harrison Ford as
Harrison Ford and Viola Davis, right? Is it Viola Davis?
Yeah,
yes. The two.
Yeah. And Ben Kingsley as the
Mercer Rackham.
Yeah.
Mace
Rackham. Man, where are you? Hailee Steinfeld.
Hailee Steinfeld. Anyway, I wanted to say her name because I really think she's undersung in it. She's brought into the movie late, and she's almost like a mob character. Like when you see that, she's like a mob sidekick where it's like, I got your back kind of character. Hailee seems to get that inherently because it's not written for her. And yet that is really what the character is. It's I'm here by your side or whatever you go through. I think it's kind of neat.
Well, yeah. And it's the, she's the muscle. She's the one that's like,
right.
You need to be able to take, I'll have your back, and I'll also teach you that, physically what you need to be able to do.
Right. Because he's a bit of a mental genius.
Yeah. But she recognizes that, oh yeah, this is the dude. He's got it up here, and he's got the strategy. He's got the brain to lead, but he doesn't have the same physical gifts that she does in terms of fighting ability and etc. So right. Yeah, so she's like, no, I'll be, she's like, I'll be the number, his number one.
Yeah, I like that performance a lot. I don't know why that one sticks out to me. I guess just because it's so underwritten in the movie and it's such a great role in the novel, and I still feel like that character from the novel shows up in the movie somehow. I give her the credit for that. Yeah, it's hard to give it to the writing, but I'm sure it's also in the direction and everything else. And that film should be a little bit longer, but it feels like they left a little out, which I bet you they did. But it's still the zero gravity military training sequences with these kids. That's the reason. The reason the Ender's Game makes a great movie when you're reading it. But the reason they didn't adapt it into a movie in 1989 was because you couldn't do those zero gravity effects effectively. You just couldn't do it. You could do it, but it would cost a fortune.
Yeah.
And, somehow they found a way to do it with today's movie magic, and it really feels real. It's a very meaningful allegory of a story. There's a lot of the thematic depth to it and richness to it that you don't usually get in those types of things.
The turn at the end of the story that comes, and I thought that they did the big turn at the end of the story. I thought that they did a really good job adapting that for the screen, and Asa Butterfield sells it. He's so his emotional turn toward the end is really, really wonderful, really believable, and it really sells this story because you've spent 100 minutes thinking that this story is all going one direction, and just like the book, it really starts to challenge you at the end,
right? To be fair, and this isn't a fair comparison because these are totally different types of tales, but to a lesser degree John Carter does the same thing. It gets to its final chapters, and you can really feel the literary heft that's there that you wouldn't get in a movie of that type if it was just a movie.
The typical
Ender's Game has that in spades. It's a extremely good book made into a very credible and decent film. It's not a great film. Something's missing from it that falls short of that. But it's very exciting from a design standpoint. It's great. Like I said, the kid cast is as good a kid cast as you're just ever going to find. It's really, really good top to bottom. And when the movie needs an adult, they bring in a ringer each time, and they're all awesome. Harrison is great in it. He's great in everything, but he just, he's willing to be in that movie and take a bit of a backseat to the story because he believes that the story is worth telling and is interesting. And he's right. And he just brings a lot to that character that I don't know. That I don't know his contemporaries that like Kevin Costner wouldn't. Not that Costner sucks, but Costner played that guy straight up because Costner lives in the character, and Harrison's always been a little able to live in the world of the story just a little bit outside the character, not completely or not even mostly, but just enough where you get, I don't know, that sense of their place in the story. I always feel like that helps a little bit with his portrayals. Not everybody has that. That's part of his magic. The opposite is, like you say, Kingsley, when he comes in, he's the opposite. He's I'm here, I'm this guy, deal with me. You know what I mean? I don't care what's going on around me. That has a certain great energy to it too. So Ender's Game is genuinely good. It's Hunger Games sequel quality-ish, something like that. That's where I would rate it. If you're a sci-fi fan and you skipped it, you really shouldn't. You should watch it.
Let's move on to 47 Ronin, which came out around the holidays.
That's another movie that's like, this isn't the movie. They made a movie and then they took it all apart and puzzled a shorter, faster, hopefully more profitable movie together from what they had, and we're left with something a little vague. The story of 47 Ronin's a cool story, and it doesn't need the fantasy elements that this introduces. Nor does it need the Western hero, really. But again, that's how this movie, that's why it's a big budget Hollywood movie instead
this
of
movie, this movie doesn't really get made, unfortunately, without without having Keanu Reeves in it.
Well, or if it does, it doesn't have a chance at it being seen. It would get made in Japan by the Japanese
Sure,
in Japanese for a Japanese audience. For a Western audience, I guess you need Keanu. And to be fair, that said, they picked the right guy. Keanu is right for this role. He really brings a lot of gravitas, and he really takes the work seriously. He's good in the movie. He helps the movie a lot because the movie's fairly corny, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
He's it's that weird. We've seen it in a bunch of things. It's that weird Zen spiritual side of Keanu that he plays really, really well in the film. The Japanese culture and the religiousness and all the stuff that hangs over it, he just takes all that serious, and that helps the project a lot, I think.
Yeah.
And it's the rest of the cast is almost exclusively Japanese, and they're all really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good, but 47 Ronin isn't that good. Like, that's one where, I don't know, be careful with this. It's got weird bird people in it, and it's got weird stuff in it, and none of it really pays off very well, because they take this total left turn after the first act, and they have this full second act of fantasy craziness, and then they try and bring it back to the actual story of the 47 Ronin, which is a fairly self-serious and reverent kind of tale, and they just can't come back from where they've been, is my feeling about it. Another movie that a small budget mini blockbuster that tries to tell the 47 Ronin story is what's called I can see it, Last Nights, with Clive Owen. Same exact story, although there's no Japanese people in that one. They just stole the story and told it in a different time and changed the names, but it is the same story. That's a fun one. 47 Ronin is the Hollywood blockbuster version. It bombed. It came out around Christmas. Is that right?
Yeah. It came out on Christmas. It was a Christmas release. Yeah.
Nobody went to see it. The movie I didn't put on this list, we've talked about it before, that I really love is that the video game movie with Fassbender. What's that one called?
Oh, Assassin's Creed.
That's not on here, but that certainly would count as this kind of movie. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna move us on to the next.
Have you seen 47 Ronin, Joel?
I have seen 47 Ronin.
Did you like it? Am I off base?
No, I concur with.
I'm trying to tell the audience enough about it so they can decide if they like it, but I don't know if I'm doing a very good job.
Well, I mean, it is weird. That second act is strange.
And there's nothing wrong with strange. Just the two things don't seem to be merged very well.
That's what I mean. It seems like you go from one movie, and then it's like, okay, we're just gonna insert this other movie here. And then we're gonna end, and we're gonna try to, and we're gonna wrap up the final.
They have a big time skip in it too that isn't very well. If you're gonna do a time skip, the only way you can make a time jump work is if your characters or the world of your story is fundamentally changed where you join it. Otherwise, if you just do it and they seem fundamentally changed, but if you talk to them for a couple minutes, they're the same, then you really wasted a time jump and just made your movie feel more fractured. This movie breaks that rule. But it's kind of funny, the fanboys out there, what they were most mad at is there's this guy with this pistol who's featured on all the posters and on all the advertising. He's got a skull face tattoo, and he looks like a pretty badass.
Rick Gnest.
Yeah, he looks like a badass Darth Maul type character, and he's really just set decoration in the movie for about 3.5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And all they did was complain about how he's on the poster but not in the movie. And I'm like, again, that's fair to be disappointed by that, but you're reviewing a film for what it isn't instead of what it is.
Yeah.
And for what it is, it's an honest attempt to tell this story to a mass audience. And just because it fails, it is sort of a noble failure.
Yeah.
But this one, unlike Ender's Game, which does almost everything right, but just doesn't enough, this one just doesn't do everything right. It's hard to explain.
It's got you mentioned the Japanese cast. It's got Japanese actors who you will go, that guy. It's filled with these Japanese. I'll butcher their names, but this guy Hiroyuki Sanada.
Yeah,
Who's in a ton of stuff. He's so good, and he was my favorite part of it. And then as sort of the lover,
he's great.
Yeah, he's
Tada
in Nobuo Asano and Carrie Hiroyuki Tagawa.
What's her face who plays the witch too is genius actor.
Oh yeah, what is her name? Oh shoot,
I'll know when I hear it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember the name of the witch. It's not Mizuki.
No, that's the princess or whatever.
Mika.
She's good too.
Ko Shibasaki, I think is the one who plays Mika. That's the lover, I think.
It's Ria. What's her name? I can't remember. Look, go to Brothers Bloom. She's the only Japanese actor in that. It'd be harder. She was Oscar nominated for that Brad Pitt, Kate Blanchett film. I can't remember what it's called right now. That fractured drama movie. She's good, really good actor. And the villain again is all special effects, but she brings a lot to it herself, and I really like her. So,
yeah, I'm not finding.
Should be one of the top names in there. She's
I'm just the character of Mika. Trying to see what other movies. Screw it. I'll go to Brothers Bloom.
You'll see her name right away in that one. She's one of the top 4 people in it, and she's brilliant.
Yeah, I picture
Brothers Bloom. Actually, she doesn't have any lines in it. It's one of my favorite performances of all time.
Rinko Kikuchi. Yeah, Rinko Kikuchi is the actor's name. But now I got to find out what the
Babel is the movie she was nominated for an Oscar in. She's extraordinary in Babel. Babel's a little heavy-handed for my tastes, but everyone should see it once just because of that, because she's so good in her part.
Oh yeah, it's just she wasn't coming up in the top names in her because her character name is just called Witch. So, but
is it?
Yeah,
she's just Witch.
It's just Witch, at least on IMDb. Yeah.
I believe it. I mean, that's just shows you what's the flaw is with 47 Ronin, is they created this witch character and they just call her Witch. They didn't bother with that other stuff. The actor brings a lot to it because she's an active part of the story, but her character as a character is not important. Her utility is important, but her as she's not a person.
Right.
She's just a cool witch and a really mean one, but that's.
Let's move on to a couple months later in February, a February release of Seventh Son.
Yeah, February is never good. Seventh Son was supposed to be late spring, then early summer, then late summer, then November, then February. That movie got moved back and moved back and moved back. It's hard, again, Seventh Son, I don't have anything against it in like a Xena Warrior Princess sort of way. It's corny and dumb, and it's just another corny and dumb movie like this to come along in a long while. But like the young kids in it come off pretty good. Ben Barnes and particularly Alicia Vikander, where when I'm watching it, I'm like, she's the second most, what are you doing in this? There's another one coming up here where I was just like, what are you doing in this? Like, you shouldn't be doing this. You have prospects, you know what I mean? You shouldn't have signed up for this.
Well, what is good about
Juliana Moore and Jeff Bridges are both in it. She gets to act with both of them. I'm sure that was tempting.
Yep.
Jeff Bridges is terrible in it. He's just terrible.
Yeah, this is one of those.
Jeff Bridges is old codger guy who was delightful for a couple movies needs to go away. I never thought I would say this, but we need the dude back, and we need old codger Jeff Bridges to go away. Go away. That's an affect. That's not a character. It's not how he talks in real life. we know this because we've seen him pretty much grow up in the movies into an old man. That guy needs to go. Retire him forever.
Yeah, it's like he did what Rooster Cogburn.
And that was brilliant.
Yeah, and that was brilliant. And it's like everyone else, like from that point on, everyone's just like, give us Rooster. Give us Rooster in space. Give us Rooster in a, right. if Rooster was in a video game.
Jeff isn't able to play this movie straight, or what this guy's saying straight, because it comes off like a theater, like, not to rip on you, theater actor, but it's a theatrical performance. It feels like a put on when you're watching it on film. And again, Ben Barnes, like him or hate him, he's a good choice for the lead guy in this role, because he's very at ease with whatever you throw at him. He's very at ease in all of his films. That's why he's good. That's what he's best at. He brings reality to the fantastical by being a person in a weird environment. Bridges and Juliana, for that matter, aren't able to do that. They've written this like star-crossed romance and all this meaningful stuff between our main hero and our main villain, but none of it really works. When we're spending time with the young people, though, it's kind of fun. Some of the digital creatures are fun. Kit Harington's cute in a cameo at the beginning of the movie. It's really cast across the board with people who want to be interesting and are doing their best, but it didn't do well. It was never going to do well. This movie was doomed from the start. It's weird that they even made it, and then once they had it, they didn't know what to do with it. Yeah. But as a late night fantasy movie, if you skipped it, hey, here's another one. And I think if you think it's going to be really terrible, you'll find it isn't that terrible at all. It's just not very effective.
It's based on a really popular young adult series of books, and so it's it's one of those that it was going to hopefully launch a franchise. It doesn't live up to it. But yeah,
who plays his mom? Olivia Williams, I think.
Yep, Olivia Williams. Yep.
It's got stuff like that. I mean, whenever Olivia Williams shows up, hey, yay.
Yeah.
But
let's move on to another Kit Harington film.
The one where he doesn't have a cameo. Hey, if Seventh Son could go back in time, they'd have just given him the lead role.
That's true.
I don't know that he'd have been as good in it. Barnes is really kind of perfect for the movie they made, but Barnes is Prince Caspian and a whole bunch of other stuff. But he's a decent actor. But Kit became the star, and poor Ben Barnes is yesterday's news now.
His
Pompeii is what you're about to say, right?
Pompeii is big. Kit Harington's big trip to the screen.
After a couple of time in the weeds with 47 Ronin and Seventh Son, I can fully 100% endorse you watching Pompeii. Pompeii is a B movie, but in the best sense in every way.
Yeah,
it's a B movie where people know they're in a B movie without winking at each other. That's the best kind. Kiefer Sutherland as a snarling, evil Roman senator is great. Carrie Ann Moss and Jared Harris as this couple who were the governorship of Pompeii. They showed up to work, and they bring fully realized characters to this silly, stupid gladiator / disaster story where Pompeii really gets it right, and where you might have missed the point of it all if you skipped it, is Pompeii is not really a hero, like a romantic hero gladiator story. It is, but whatever it is for its first hour and 20 minutes, what it is at the end is a flat out global monster, inescapable disaster film.
Yeah.
And it's when it's not that, it's fun. It's the fun, cool stuff of any sort of cheap costume drama. It's really, really well done. The romance, the melodrama, the conflicting whatever, even the gladiatorial training scenes, all that crap.
Yeah, I sort of feel like the first part of the movie is Gladiator. The second part of the movie is Titanic.
Right. Titanic is really good comparison, actually. It has that flow to it. Like, it's so big and it goes on for so long and so many terrible things happen.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's, yeah, I mean, and it's just, it's this
most
massive...
disaster movies in the Roland Emmerich mode, 2012 or Day After Tomorrow, you see this massive death on a scale where in the middle of it all, you always have some plucky family managing to survive all of it. And that takes the pressure off of you as an audience member to give a crap about anything that's happening in it on a large scale, because it's okay, because Jake Gyllenhaal is going to have a girlfriend at the end, and we're going to lose some ancillary characters along the way, and it's going to be sad because we like them, and of course massive amounts of people that we somehow don't identify with are going to be completely wiped out before our eyes.
Yeah.
We would never be them. We'd be the one who just took flying lessons at just the right time to escape California falling into the ocean. Pompeii it's still that kind of movie, so I don't want to oversell it, but it's done with so much more verisimilitude than that, and so much more reality of the horror of what that was on the ground. It's portrayed so much more realistically that I really love it. For a late night cheesy film, it's a really, really good one. It's a delightful one. It's like they didn't have the best idea for a movie there, but the way they did it was great. It might be my favorite Paul W.S. Anderson film, because all his other movies are Resident Evil movies. That's part of the reason.
Yeah.
But even his other movies that are more celebrated, Soldier and Event Horizon, like, I really think Pompeii is better. He's working at a really high scale. He's got a pretty good budget. And he brought along people with him that wanted to tell that story as seriously as they could.
Yeah, I like what you said about, but when you were talking about Carrie-Anne Moss and Jared Harris, and Kit Harington too. They commit. They just fully commit to tell this story. It doesn't work all the time, but it doesn't matter. They're going for it. They're telling the story.
Right. It's not perfect.
Yeah. I like it. Actually, and I will say this, just because I happened, as I was scrolling here, looking up and making sure I had cast members right. At the time we release this podcast, people will be able to watch Pompeii on IFC.
Nice.
Starting in the second week of July. Probably will be available on demand then, if you
it's a strange choice for IFC.
Yeah, but that's
whatever.
I was like,
Pompeii is a fun one. It's a fun one. It's a disaster film, and they don't make a lot of those. And even disaster films sometimes take a long time to get going. I thought Pompeii was corny, but again, pretty well done. The Carrington's great, and who's the woman in that? She's great too. Really good.
Yeah, it is Emily Browning.
Emily Browning, who's a really good actor who's in mostly garbage, but here's another case of that. But she seems to do the biggest movie she can, and I think that's hurt her, because she hasn't done a small movie where we could all say, "Oh wow, look at you, you're really good."
Yep.
Everything she's in, even the things she's like the featured in, sort of dwarf her talents to some degree, but she's a good actor. And I hate to make you look, but if you've got that movie open, there's a guy who's Kiefer Sutherland's sidekick in the movie, who's a fantastic actor, who was in Caprica, and he was in a bunch of other things, and he's going to be a few names down the list. He's got like an Eastern European name, but he's Canadian, I think.
Well, was the character Bellator Curry Graham?
No, Curry Graham's the slave trader's sidekick, the gladiator guy.
Oh, he's
great.
Sidekick.
Curry Graham's great too. I always like to see him.
Joe Pingay,
keep going.
Sasha Royce.
That's it, Sasha Royce.
Oh yeah. Oh, this guy. Yeah. No, okay.
He's great in Pompeii. I love him in it. He's just great. He's great in it. Man.
His picture didn't look like.
And I think because Sasha, even though he's in a bunch of stuff, he doesn't get to do big movies like that. And even in this movie, he's really important, and he's still like 22nd build or something. Like his agent is not doing right by him. But he's great in the movie. You know, he's the bad guy hunting down our heroes, even when the world's falling apart around them. And that's a fun trope. And he doesn't play it, you know, he doesn't play it like an angry, obsessed guy. He plays it like a typical, you know, feed me grapes while I'm laying here on my side, and it's time to kill people. Cool.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. The world is hedonism and it's meaningless, and I'm just gonna, you know, you're just the thing I'm hunting right now. He plays it really great. I love it. Mm-hmm. So Pompeii, I highly recommend that one.
I also recommend it. I was very happy to see that when you sent your list of these are the movies I want to make sure to talk about. I was like, oh, Pompeii. I had a lot of fun watching that one. Next one is a movie that I really love. I know you like it too. We won't spend a lot of time on it because it doesn't really need, but it sort of does fit in this range of movies that we're talking about here. This form of movies. Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah, it
feels like we don't need to spend a lot of time on it because despite that coming out, being a big budget film and then being a bit of a flop, it didn't flop disastrously, but it's notable for flopping because everything about it is good. Everything about it is good. On this list, it is by far the best movie. It is a near perfect event movie.
Yeah,
it really is. It's smart. It's slick. It's fun. It's super adventurous, high budget, high concept, great character stuff. Everything about it is good, and it's still bombed. This movie shouldn't have bombed. If just on the merits, it shouldn't have bombed. You can argue, well, of course, John Carter had to make $500 million to even earn a penny. Of course, it's going to bomb. This film was much more modest, still very effective, and just should have done better. Yeah. Most people have heard of it by now. It's often referred to as its alternate name, which is Live, Die, Repeat.
Right. Which they tried to throw in about halfway, or not, like 3 weeks after it opened to try to
that name actually, that was the theatrical poster is
it said Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow.
They've been trying to call it that for a long, long time. And I have to say it's a better name. Edge of Tomorrow is not a good name. That name doesn't even mean anything.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's
based on a manga called All You Need Is Kill. And they couldn't call it that. They couldn't call it All You Need Is Kill because that's grammatically it's weird. That's the English translation of a Japanese name that actually means something.
Right.
But doesn't mean anything to us. And Edge of Tomorrow is just like, you could call any movie Edge of Tomorrow. You really could call any movie Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
And get away with it because it has so little meaning. It's like so I don't love Live, Die, Repeat. And I think it's corny that they tried to rename it that, but they just should have named it that. Because I got to tell you, that's what it is. Live, Die, Repeat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what the movie is. It's terrific. And so I wanted to make sure, I'm glad we have it on the list because often people will go, oh, it's that movie. Like as they're seeing it scroll by or in your recommendations on Netflix or whatever, or, and it's the one movie that I like, where I'm like, oh, you haven't seen it? Oh, put that in your, you got to see it. Because it is super fun. It's
word of mouth since that film's been out has done it a lot of justice. A lot of people have streamed it, have liked it, have told their friends to watch it. They've watched it. They've liked it. Yep. It's really tough to imagine people not liking it because it's so well done. Yep. It's for everybody, literally.
Yeah.
It's a perfect mass entertainment. And for whatever reason, people didn't go see it in the theater.
Right. So let's move on from it. So go see Edge of Tomorrow if you haven't seen it.
/ Live, Die, Repeat.
Live, Die, Repeat.
All You Need Is Kill.
All You Need Is Kill. / that one with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt.
It's great. It's really good.
Yep. Next up is
one of the final films of Bill Paxton too, and he's great in it.
Bill Paxton is terrific in it.
It's really fun. It's really great.
I always think he's his character from Weird Science, the older brother in Weird Science. He's him all grown up. Yeah. And I sort of think
maybe he's more like, to me, he's like the character in Aliens if he'd lived.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that works too. Yeah, he's Hudson if he would have lived. All right.
Hudson 20 years later. He's the Where Are They Now version of Hudson.
Or maybe, I guess, depending on, because this would have happened earlier, so maybe Hudson is this guy's, like, great-grandson.
Yeah, I wasn't taking the timeline that literally, but the millennials, thank you for making that distinction.
Because I'm that dumb. All right.
They don't approve of your weird science reference, but
No.
they do like that you made it all work within the timeline and that the continuity has been preserved. Yes. Thank you for that.
Yep. So next up is Hercules, The Rock's Hercules, Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, this is the one with Rebecca Ferguson. As soon as she shows up, and I'm like, what? How'd they get you to be in this piece of junk? You know, it just must be hard. This is the proof. It must just be hard being a woman in Hollywood. Because the best you can do sometime is I'm the woman in Hercules.
Yeah.
Who's directing it? Oh, Brett Ratner. Okay, I guess I'll do it. You know, and she's great in it. She shows up and does her work. There's no sense that she's slumming when she's in it, but I gotta say, and a lot of people we've talked about, Ian McShane, I think, is in this one.
Yep.
He's got a whole Hercules has got like a posse, and that's the funnest thing about it. Is even though it's a rock movie, it's really him and his crew going around doing military work for hire in, you know, mythological ancient Greece or whatever.
Yep.
Big budget, lots of human armies clashing with fantastical beasts and creatures and things. There's a deep, dark secret in the middle of it and a vendetta. And there's twists and turns and double crosses. And Hercules isn't really the Hercules of all his feats. His legend is sort of, he plays this guy who can really do amazing things, but still somehow can't do the amazing things he's credited with doing in the stories they're telling about him. And it's sort of the story about what would a guy like that be if he was alive during his own legend. That's a neat idea. And then it just becomes something that has nothing to do with Hercules. But it isn't bad. It's a well done film. It's got a good cast top to bottom. If you like The Rock, but you somehow skip this one, it's one of his better movies and certainly one of his better performances. Now we're talking about The Rock. Right. You might love The Rock and think he's great in everything. I think he's terrible in almost everything. And I think almost everything he's in is bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
when something comes along like this that's passable, I can't help but recommend it. It's okay. It's not a fun family film, though. Its third act is really brutally violent and terrible. It's, you know, for a movie that plays it light and loose early on, it really does have a turn about halfway through that turns it into a different kind of movie. But still pretty effective. John Hurt's in it. He's good in it.
I was just trying to look, because this was sort of, I think, this was right before he sort of became Dwayne Johnson or The Rock. Oh no, I guess he had done one of the Fast and the Furious. He had done one of the Fast and the Furious movies already. So this was but this was still on the rise of The Rock becoming The Rock, or Dwayne Johnson.
This movie was a success. This is one of the most successful movies on this list, in fact. I didn't know it was a success. I assumed it bombed because I don't know anyone who's seen it. So I don't know who saw it, just Rock fans who I don't interact with, obviously, on a daily basis. But it's not bad. That's just the thing. It's not as good as Pompeii because it just doesn't get the balance as right. It chooses the cheesy way out whenever it can, but it's still pretty entertaining and fun. Plenty of big budget, fight scenes and such, and plenty of fun heroics by him. So, and like I said, The Rock showed up to be this character. That really helps. To be fair to him, he's not asked to do that a lot, not even a majority of the time. He's asked to come in and just coast and have fun, and that whatever that inherent charm that he has, he does have it, is considered enough. In fact, it's considered necessary. And that it takes the bite out of most of the movies he's in. Even the bad ones, he really needs to be he's capable of good acting. He does good acting on his TV show, for example, which I also don't like for other reasons. But he's good on that, so he can do it. So do it, man. Do it every time. That's my advice to The Rock. It'll help every movie you're in, even the dumb ones, even Skyscraper and, you know.
Rampage and,
nothing can help Rampage.
No, we're not.
Skyscraper could have been helped by a more serious take on the character. Nothing could have helped Rampage. All right. Don't see Rampage.
See Hercules. Don't see Rampage. All right, so let's move on to Jupiter Ascending, the Wachowskis.
I cannot with a straight face recommend Jupiter Ascending. Everything, I've been a big defender of the Wachowskis for all their movies, really. Anybody wanted to complain about Speed Racer, Speed Racer's awesome. I'll stand up for Speed Racer any day of the week. I'll get into the ring with you and fight over Speed Racer. I'll fight over Cloud Atlas. I'll fight over that one. I think it's great. But I'm not right 100% because Jupiter Ascending really is everything they accuse them of. That's bad. It's overlong. It's pompous and ridiculous while still feeling silly and stupid. Like people claim the Matrix sequels are. This is like that times 100. It squanders a massive budget on a story that's really, really hard to find a connection with. Eddie Redmayne, Taylor, what's his name? Taylor something?
Well, are you talking about Channing Tatum?
Channing Tatum. I always think his name is Taylor, and that's why I forget his name. Shouldn't forget Channing Tatum, but yeah, he's in it. He's a good actor, too. He's doing his best. Mila Kunis. Channing Tatum, Mila Kunis, two of the most beautiful people on the planet, really. But Mila Kunis is playing like a cleaning lady, and you kind of don't buy it. All you see is like TV star.
Yeah.
From the minute she's cleaning her first toilet, you're like, yeah, she's going to be queen of the universe someday. Like the movie has that weird sense of Hollywood cliche right from the get-go. So why recommend it? I don't know. Look, it's huge space opera. Everybody's having fun. The makeup and digital creature effects are stunning.
Yeah, the visual. It looks gorgeous.
The space battles are off the hook cool. There is a cool moment where Sean Bean plays a disgruntled former soldier hiding out on Earth who is a beekeeper, and all the bees really dig Mila Kunis. And I have to say that's magical. It's movie magic, basically, that moment.
Yeah.
So there's some neat moments in it, but it's really corny and bad. The reason you go to Jupiter Ascending is if you skipped it, it's a big Star Wars like space opera. It really is on that scale. It is a huge film. I just wish they'd have done everything differently. I don't know if that makes sense, but because even the story in this one, I'm like, this story is dumb. It's why I'm avoiding giving you any details. Jupiter is this young girl who's a cleaning lady. It turns out she's one of the princesses of the universe and the ruler of Jupiter, and she just needs to be shown the way, and then she'll save the universe. And guess what? She does. Hooray!
Channing Tatum says, "Hey, I'll show you," and then cool.
Yeah, he's like a half wolf, half human guardian character.
Yeah, he's a genetically engineered soldier, half human, half canine. Okay.
It's weird. That's weirder than it is entertaining, and just about everything in this movie is. Yeah. Watch Eddie Redmayne. Watch him. Watching him is like watching a guy trying to like run an obstacle course blindfolded through a movie. He just did whatever. He's a good actor. He's a little over the top, but he's a pretty good actor. And scene to scene, he's just cast adrift and doesn't know what to do. And there's no consistent performance from him in it because I think the movie is just silly.
Yeah.
Or maybe because Eddie, when he doesn't know what to do with the material, just turns it up to 11. A lot of actors like him, Paul Dano, a bunch of other guys. If it's not good, they just go for it. It could be worse. Just going for it's better than just winking and coasting.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't really do that, but I don't know. It's
Let's move on. Let's move on to October of that year, 2015. Pan. We are going to talk about Pan, the latest Peter Pan.
I shouldn't even have put that on the list. I can't recommend Pan. I really love Joe Wright as a director. I've liked all his other movies, honestly. Atonement. We talked about some of them on the show. He did Keira Knightley's Pride and Prejudice. He did Hannah, the spy movie with Saoirse Ronan. You know, it's just a very clever director, lots of big uninterrupted takes and fun old school film tricks. Pan was his idea of making a big budget version, like origin story of Peter Pan. And Garrett Hedlund plays Dr. Hook as a young guy, and he's basically doing a John Huston impression in the film. And that is delightful. And that's it. That's it.
All right. Well, if you're
a big Garrett Hedlund fan, because I'm telling you, if you're a big Rooney Mara fan or a big Hugh Jackman fan, you're in trouble. Yeah. Rooney does tell a fun story about it, which I'll convey briefly. She said that Hugh Jackman is one of the nicest, just genuinely nicest people she's ever worked with. She says you can kind of tell that in interviews what kind of person he is, but it's really not an act. He loves everybody. He's kind to crew members. He always makes sure that a set is positive and healthy. Yeah. He uses all his star power for good and not evil. Like, he's everything you'd want out of a movie star, essentially. And you hear that about a lot of guys, Matt Damon and a handful of others. Hugh Jackman, and she tells a story about how something kept going wrong like a dozen times or something that kept breaking, or I can't remember what it is. And her take on it, and maybe this isn't as funny when I say it, but her take on it was, we're gonna see it. We're gonna see Hugh Jackman.
We're gonna see him break.
We're gonna see it happen. And you could tell she's getting all excited about it. And it didn't happen. He needed a break. And he walked off set for a little bit, but he refused to just be a jerk. So Hugh Jackman's awesome. Rooney Mara, another recent case of, she plays Tiger Lily in it. She's great. She's cute. I don't know, but
I thought we were
talking about Peter Pan. How many actual Native Americans played the Native Americans in Peter Pan before?
Yeah.
Any? Are they really even Native Americans as we think of them? I mean, they are deliberately a put on. A lot of versions of the stories leave them out entirely just to avoid the sort of awful racial cliches. I don't know. Pan's not good, but it is lavish, and it really wants to be good, but I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I wish Garrett Hedlund's Captain Hook was in a different movie. Yeah. Or I wish they'd let him play John Huston in a John Huston biopic.
I thought
he's really delightful in it. He's a guy I didn't think much of until I saw that film.
I essentially thought we were going to get like a film version of Peter and the Starcatcher, which is also kind of it's an origin story.
That would have been great.
Peter Pan thing. But then it just. Let's move on. The Finest Hours, 2016. This took
The Finest Hours.
With
Chris, all you Disney Plus subscribers, The Finest Hours is a Coast Guard rescue story that cost like $140 million to make. It's got Chris Pine and Ben Foster and Holiday Granger and Eric Bana in it. Why didn't you see it? This is like the kind of Apollo 13 kind of movie that we all used to look forward to and see, all of them. And they used to be the best big movies Hollywood used to make. And see it, for the love of God.
Yeah.
Finest Hours is amazing. It's about a giant cargo ship that breaks in half in the ocean. And unfortunately for it, it's the second giant cargo ship that broke in half in the ocean during this particular storm. And nobody can help them. So this Coast Guard, it's the greatest Coast Guard rescue in the history of the American Coast Guard. The film is amazingly believable looking. It is a huge budget picture. It's got romance. It's got everything you could want. Just see it. It's a great human story. And most people, when I say the name is a little bit generic, but it's our fault that movie didn't have a higher profile, and it's our fault that it wasn't a big hit.
Yep.
And it's our fault that they don't make more movies like it, because investing in them is pointless when no one's going to see them. Finest Hours isn't the greatest movie ever. It's a big Hollywood film based on a true story. You know, it's a little cheesy in that aspect. It's a little inspiration-y. You know?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I was looking at here, and
but
I was
that's the worst thing you can say about something.
Like, what was
real.
You know, the one thing that apparently came up a bunch from different critics is essentially said it's old-fashioned to a fault. So it's it's like old-fashioned movie.
Yeah.
It with its beats and everything, and they're saying it just so it doesn't. I don't know.
That's wrong.
Didn't quite resonate.
If the slate was full of old-fashioned movies, then I'd agree. But we need movies like that.
Sure.
Honestly, I really believe that. Disney can afford to take a bath on a film like that, so they don't care. Yeah. But they should want to tell stories like that. That's what they used to be so good at, you know, taking those exciting, wouldn't this be amazing stories and investing in them to the point that you can tell them believably on screen. A cargo ship breaking in half and deliberately scuttling itself on the rocks so that it can stay alive long enough for people to rescue them. Mm-hmm. And those Coast Guard guys beating the waves out to the ocean in what should really be an impossible situation. It's heroism that I love watching on screen. And it takes place in the 50s. It's about old-fashioned people. Of course it's old-fashioned.
It's Chris
Boo to you, critics.
Boo, critics. Boo earns. All right.
Finest Hours is great. See it.
All right.
There's no snarky humor in it, and nobody wears a cape. Okay, but see it. Just do it. Yeah. I command you.
All right. Let's talk about Gods of Egypt.
Wow, there's a left turn.
Yep. I'm going chronologically. It came out. It's the Gods of. So here, Finest Hours came out at the end of January. Gods of Egypt came out just a scant 3 weeks later.
And neither of them did very well. End of January is not where you put your big budgeted movies you think are going to perform well at the box office. By the way, it's turning into a year-round thing because there's so many big budget movies. But end of January is still a bad time if you find yourself there. Seventh Son, and Gods of Egypt is it's the other. It's totally corny. It's got tons of snark. It's all snark.
It's all
the time. That said, it's directed by not or is he New Zealand? Is he a Kiwi? I don't mean to get it. He's either Australian or he's Kiwi, but
he's Australian.
National. But he's an Egyptian heritage guy. The guy who made Dark City and
iRobot.
This is a guy who
he
knows his way around big budget cinema. Knowing, that's a disaster movie I like that everyone hates, that I think is pretty good. This is his worst movie by far. Okay, this whole movie exists as a weird international tax write-off. It's a film they made money on. Even though it cost a ton of money and nobody saw it, it's a film they made money on before it opened because of the way they financed it. Anytime you're involved in that sort of thing, what's on screen, the art is not that important. It just has to fit a certain mold so that it can justify its existence. This does all of that. And as corny and snarky and stupid as it is, and it's all of those things, it admirably gets the Egyptology almost exactly right. That's amazing. Because when you're watching it, you'll be going, this can't be right. But it is. It really actually does a good job of telling the story. It's got these big budget movie stars in it. Gerard Butler plays this Egyptian god, and his brother is played by Nicola Coster-Waldau from Game of Thrones, amongst other things. Their father is played by Jeffrey Rush. Mm-hmm. It's gods who are giants living among humans like us. It takes the Egyptian myth seriously, and when you do that and show it on screen, it obviously looks ridiculous. That said, there's an easy breezy Hollywood fun to it. The way the characters talk to each other, the weird rat-a-tat-tatty snarkiness and stuff is actually kind of fun, especially when the woman gets involved. She's pretty great. She brings a lot to the movie. I can't remember her name.
It is.
She's like not a Bollywood actor, but
Where's my cast?
she's like a different kind of.
Not Courtney Eaton. It's Elodie Young.
No. She's in it. She's good. The young hero characters are great. The cute young kids who are trying to save the day and each other and their love, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But she plays this Egyptian goddess of something. Maybe it's love or something. There's this neat moment where, because she's like the goddess of love, she gets whatever she wants from whoever she wants. And when she comes up to our young, scrappy hero and tries to manipulate him into doing what she wants, she can't, and she realizes that's because he's truly in love with somebody else. And she asks about it. She goes, well, okay, who is it? In a snarky sort of way. Obviously you're in love with somebody, and he has to give her some bad news in response, and her reaction is really genuine and wonderful. The filmmakers are good and the actors are good, and they allow for those moments. Jeffrey Rush, he's a great actor if you need a silly guy, because he is pretty over the top, but he has his moments too. And it was a huge budget film with huge effects. Lots of imaginative effect sequences and stuff. Mm-hmm. It has its moments. It's a bad movie, so you got to understand that. But it just might be your kind of bad movie, especially if you know it's bad going into it. If you're somebody who really just watches the Marvel films over and over and over again, this is probably the movie on this list for you, because it's not as good as any of those, even the worst ones. Well, it's much better than a couple of the worst ones, but it's not as good as any of the films like that. Mm-hmm. And yet that's what it's trying to emulate. It does an okay job of emulating it, so maybe give it a try.
It does have some casting problems. These are supposed to be Egyptian gods, and they're all played by like Australian and European and American actors. So
Europeans, Australians, South Africans. It has an ethnically diverse cast, but I believe there are no Egyptians whatsoever in it.
Right. So that is problematic.
But this is a fantasy piece of fluff.
Yes, it is giant fluff fantasy.
Yeah.
Tax. I like what you said about tax write-off, because I'm seeing.
Like when I watched that didn't bother me. It bothered me a little bit in Exodus, Gods and Kings, the historical epic. That had a bunch of Jewish people in it, which is helpful. But, Sigourney Weaver, John Turturro, these people are not Egyptian, Middle Eastern people at all. Yeah. So that was a little weirder, but that movie's playing it a little straighter. This film video game ridiculousness.
This is for goofs. All right, let's move on to The Nice Guys. The Nice Guys, which was Russell Crowe and
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling.
I highly recommend The Nice Guys too, but with the caveat: The Nice Guys is a comedy with a lot of really dark, seedy stuff in it. It's 70s porn industry. It's got lots of really brutal deaths, the first of which is terrible. Mm-hmm. It's wickedly put kids in the middle of all this stuff. The world of the story feels crueler because it's infused with all this innocence that doesn't belong amongst all this stuff. Shane Black's a really clever writer and a decent enough director, and this was a passion project for him. And mm-hmm. Gosling and Crowe are fantastic. They're really, really great in it, and the laughs are really, really great. The physical comedy is hilarious. The visual sight gags are really wild and fun. The film keeps surprising you and shocks you like a lighter sort of Tarantino pick might. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to like about it, but it just doesn't sit easy with me because I was accosted by so much ugliness.
Yeah,
that's the point of it.
And it was, it was marketed sort of as this buddy cop movie,
which it is. Private detective movie.
Yeah, private detective movie. But you're right. You're watching it and then you're laughing and these two guys are really, it's this really great chemistry between the two of them and all. And then, it just sort of, it does take these dark turns where you're just kind of like,
maybe you won't be bothered by them. The reality is a lot of people aren't. I think Joel and I are very sensitive. I think the brutality in that film is the point of the movie. So it doesn't just show up there by accident. It's the point of the film.
Yeah. But because
the movie
it
is
marketed,
balancing these things that are meant to make you feel uncomfortable and on edge, and the story does that, and not a lot of stories these days do that.
Sure.
So I admired that about it.
No, I agree with you. It's just that wasn't the movie we were sold.
Right. Hollywood doesn't know how to sell an actual Shane Black picture.
Yeah.
It just
and
doesn't.
So it was, so we went and I would, and I think that ultimately, the word of mouth and kind of critical reviews of it were kind of like, oh, hey, those trailers that you've watched that you're like, oh,
they felt like they got bait and switched.
Yeah. It felt like a bait and switch. That's a perfect way to put it.
So going in what it is, it's really pretty great, I have to say. I mean, it's really pretty great. I've seen it a couple of times, and I wouldn't have watched. It's unpleasant enough that I wouldn't have watched it the second time if it wasn't really good. So.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Ben-Hur, the 2016 remake of Ben-Hur.
We're running out of time, and I won't spend any time on Ben-Hur. I've talked about Ben-Hur in the past. Because Ben-Hur is not even a blockbuster. It's a religious epic, Ben-Hur, the name of the novel back at the turn of the century or whatever it was called, Ben-Hur, Story of the Christ.
Yeah.
Of course, Hollywood leaves out that last part because it's misleading. It's not about the Christ at all. He's barely in it. It's about a Jewish prince and a Roman soldier who grew up as adopted blood brothers who fall apart, and it becomes a revenge tale over that, and a big epic one. What I love about Ben-Hur, I love the location shooting. I love Jack Huston, and I mean, I love John Huston's grandson. Is he Angelica Huston's kid? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, member of the Huston family. My personal favorite. I love him. I loved him on a show called Boardwalk Empire, and I adore him now in pretty much everything he's in. I love him in American Hustle. He's great. And he plays the lead in it, and he didn't get to play leads because he's kind of a quirky, goofy guy in real life. So rarely does he get to play this heroic lead character, and he does great in it. And I like that movie because first of all, it gets to the heart of what the book is. We've praised the scale of the Charlton Heston film for ages. That was one of the biggest biblical epics of its time. This movie's much shorter and much more modest, but it still goes gangbusters on its chariot race and all that stuff. Yeah. But what's really neat about it is that story of the Christ part. I don't want to sell it. Religious people didn't like it. So if you're not religious, hey, don't worry. Non-religious people didn't want it. Yeah. So they didn't see it. So nobody saw it. Essentially, it was its fate. And the reality is that it's a great adaptation of that story told in a fun and inventive way. You get involved in it. And like a story of the Christ should be, it's not about revenge only, like the Charlton Heston Ben-Hur is about. It's about forgiveness and learning to live with tragedy. And that's a harder story to tell. And I just love that this smaller movie that came out years later, instead of just making a Hollywood version of an old film, went back to the book and said, geez, this book's about this. And then made that. It's by Timur Batuka or whatever his name is. I can't remember. So Russian guy, made Night Watch and Day Watch and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which I think is fun. And Wanted, which everybody likes.
Timur Bekmambetov.
Good job.
Yeah, I'm going with that.
I could have done almost that good if I had the name in front of me.
When you have it in front of it, when you have it in front of you, it actually works because you're like, oh, Bekmambetov, yeah.
Yeah, Timur, he's an inventive director, and Ben-Hur is fun, but You got to like biblical epics to begin with. If you do, you shouldn't miss it because it's much better than its corny trailers portray. They sell it like a big dumb summer movies. That's what they're trying to sell, and it just isn't that at all. Yeah. It's got the action chops, but it's about something. It's very old fashioned.
All right, let's move on to Magnificent Seven. Yeah.
Magnificent Seven's great. But it's a Western, so people didn't see it. It's just stupid. It's frustrating to me. This is, maybe you don't like Westerns, but this is the Western they tried to give you that would make you like them. It's got movie stars in it from top to bottom. It's super ethnically diverse, which these types of films usually aren't. Maybe to a fault, since each character's ethnicity is some major hurdle in their personal story. But that's better than skipping out on the ethnicity like the original did.
Sure, yeah.
Denzel Washington's great in it. What's the guy everybody loves?
Denzel, there's Chris Pratt. Ethan Hawke.
Pratt is delightful in it. Everything you like about Chris Pratt is in Magnificent Seven in spades. He's really fun and funny, and he goes out like a champ. He's great. Ethan Hawke is good. Vincent D'Onofrio.
Lee Byung-hun.
Peter Sarsgaard.
Yeah, Peter Sarsgaard.
Matt Bomer, who's a really good underrated actor.
Yes, he is.
He plays this total psycho in Nice Guys. He's great in that. And he's great in this as a poor, doomed homesteader who just wants to do the right thing.
Right.
I love it. It's a big action Western. It's a Hollywood blockbuster Western. It's the oldest Western story ever told. It goes all the way back to whatever.
Yeah.
Seven Samurai. It's great. It's fun.
All
it's
right,
not great, but it's great and fun, and people should have saw it.
Couple more movies. Let's quick knock these out. King Arthur, Legend of the Sword.
That movie's terrible.
Okay. Anything good about it? Any reason to see it?
No.
All right.
That's only here as a point of comparison. That fits with all these movies, but there is nothing to recommend that movie. That movie's one of the most dumbest, wrong-headed films I've ever seen. Right. If what you really want is a King Arthur story told where all the characters walk around like they're in a Fast and Furious movie, then there's your movie.
Okay.
That movie's garbage.
This is not the Clive Owen King Arthur movie.
No, that movie is great in the middle of the movie.
I would agree. I just want to make sure that people aren't like.
But at least that movie is a great middle. That's something. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that people aren't like but isn't Clive Owen Clive Owen, Keira Knightley? Yeah, no, that was a few years. That was yeah, that was from the aughts. This is a new King Arthur movie that was tried to.
Legends of the Sword is a giant budget Warner Brothers film that just is terrible. Mm-hmm. It's just awful. It's by Guy Ritchie, who, I could take or leave, but every once in a while I take him. And here he just completely poofed up. That film shouldn't exist. It's that bad.
All right. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets.
Boy, I talked too long, man, because I can hardly I whipped through King Arthur, but Valerian's not a movie you can whip through. Valerian's bizarre. It's a bizarre film. It's based on a bizarre French comic. Again, another $200 million space adventure that has no reason to exist. Nobody wanted it. No one was ever going to see it. Anyone with half a brain could have told you that, but somehow it existed in Hollywood. And it is delightful. It's by Luc Besson, who made, his previous sci-fi epic was Fifth Element. And it has all of Fifth Element's strengths and all of its flaws. It's bizarre and stupid. It's way too comical to be taken seriously. When it's taken seriously, it feels corny because it's been so silly the whole rest of the time. That said, he's an inventive filmmaker working with an almost unlimited budget. So he does come up with some sequences that are imaginative, aliens that are funny, jokes that make you laugh. But Rihanna's in it. Generally, I would tell you don't see anything with Rihanna in it, and this would be no exception.
Hey, Herbie Hancock's in it as well.
Lots of great people are
Yeah.
in it, but it's
No,
not good.
yeah.
But it's crazy and wonky and fun. And if
It's
you are one of those people
unlike
like,
anything else.
I just need to turn my brain off. Well, turn it all the way off. And if you put Valerian on and you really, I can't turn my brain off, but if you can, it's diverting because it's never boring. I'll give it that.
Sure. We'll go.
Legends of the
we'll
Sword is boring. Not only is it big and bad, it's boring. Valerian, at least, isn't boring.
Yeah. Only has 2 of those 3 Bs. All right.
Yep.
And now for the other bookend.
Big and bad and beautiful.
Yeah. The bookend from the beginning of the show, Taron Egerton, Jamie Foxx in Robin Hood.
Robin Hood, it should be as stupid as King Arthur Legend of the Sword is. It's the same kind of wrong-headed approach to the material. Wisecracking modern heroes waltzing through an old legend like it should be junk, but Robin Hood has its heart in the right place. And I got to tell you, that's all that makes all the difference. It makes all the difference. Robin Hood is garbage, just like King Arthur Legend of the Sword is, but it's watchable and enjoyable because it has heart. That's all that matters. In the end, that's all that matters. If you have heart, it's hard to say, well, where do we do that, or who's in charge of that department? It's why it doesn't happen in some movies, even though hundreds of people work on them who are talented, crafted, inventive people. Sometimes it just happens. Robin Hood, if you want to watch a movie like that, pick that one because that one's fun. That one's fun, at least. Geez, at least it's fun.
Yeah.
At least the characters seem to care about what's happening to them, even if they are a little corny. I was stunned by how easily enjoyable that film was. You didn't say Man from U.N.C.L.E. That's the Guy Ritchie movie I actually like.
Oh, I skipped it. I didn't put. When I was.
Hey, no biggie.
Yeah,
well, just as a capper, Man from U.N.C.L.E. I really dig that. That movie's fun.
Yeah. So check out the Man from U.N.C.L.E.
That's a fun period spy movie. It's not great. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It has its heart in the right place. So it shows that Guy Ritchie can do it because his King Arthur movie, and they're all like, "This is the first of 5 King Arthur."
Oh my God!
And we haven't even seen it yet. And it's like I don't like to pounce on things or prejudge things, but I'm like, "This is the first of 5, you guys." It's one. You have one chance to make a good movie. You're not going to get 5 chances with this, and you didn't try very hard, and it failed because of it. Everybody worked hard on it. You can't not work hard on a $200 million blockbuster movie. You just can't. Everybody has an army of people have to do a ton of work.
Yeah.
It starts at the top when your movie lacks anything that's meaningful or interesting. Hey,
sure.
Guy got it right. A much more modest film, but Guy got it right in Man from U.N.C.L.E., so it's worth mentioning. Again, Armie Hammer, he's great in that film, and so is Superman. What's his name? Henry
Cavill. Yeah.
And Alicia Vikander, who we've talked about, and Elizabeth Debicki. Like it's really, really, it's a fun, breezy, fun spoof of an old 60s spy entertainment. It's a spoof of Man from U.N.C.L.E., but like Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes films, it sort of knows you actually have to be a good spy movie too. You can have fun with the form, but you got to do it at the same time. When his movies don't do that, like in King Arthur, they're almost unwatchable. When they do it, they're genuinely, even if they're bad, like the second Sherlock Holmes movie is not very good, but it's totally watchable because it at least gets that balance right.
Sure.
All right, we're done.
All right, that'll do it for us. I hope we were able to give you a couple options for movies that maybe you skipped out on for whatever reason. These are not movies.
I tried to advocate for them as best I could.
Yeah, they're not going to rock your world. They're not going to change the way you see movies, but they might just be a wonderful, wonderful way to spend 2 hours or so.
Only Edge of Tomorrow. You can tell which ones we love and which ones we're not crazy about, but only Edge of Tomorrow is must see on this list.
Yeah, Edge of Tomorrow, but give Pompeii a chance. Give Ender's Game a chance. Those are fun films.
Yeah, if you're in the mood for that kind of thing,
Guys,
there's no reason they're pretty good.
Yeah.
Finest Hours too, if you don't mind.
Finest Hours, indeed. So, all right. So next week we'll be talking about one of the greatest films of all time, and
certainly one of the greatest summer adventures of all time, Jaws, and the films it spawned.
Yes.
A bit of a pun. Get it?
Indeed, I did. All right, so thank you so much for joining us for this week, and yeah, I guess
want to be on the Jaws show. Write us in advance.
Yes. If you have any thoughts on Jaws, questions about Jaws, anything you want to make sure that we talk about when it comes to
We'll include it in the show.
3D,
we skipped our section today because I went
3D aspects of Jaws 3D. We can make sure to talk about sharks crashing through windows.
That'll come up.
All right, so we hope that you will join us next week for that show. And once again, we thank you so much for joining us this week on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Once again, you can reach out to us at Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter and Instagram, Ask Joel and Ryan at gmail.com, and the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook. And of course,
those are the hot spots.
And you can see these, of course, on YouTube. Search for the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan on YouTube for all your visual delights.
Cool.
So, all right. Have a good week, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.